Hello there, this is Alan English, actor, writer and autism trainer. Just following on from my previous video where I talked about the various definitions of bullying, and I want to relate some of my own experiences of bullying and being bullied. And for me, this started with my being a bully. I think what made me become a bully and attract the attention of other bullies was both my awareness of my own vulnerable autistic nature and the desire to hide it, combined with fantasies of being a superhero, fighting baddies and getting the girl. I genuinely thought I could be Superman or Batman and dish out punishment to those who deserved it. One difference between fantasy and reality, of course, is that quite often people who you think deserve punishment quite frequently don't. So in trying to be a hero in some situations, you may well end up looking like the villain. Another difference is that violence in film or TV isn't really violence. It's a dance. It's a dance with staged moves and quick cuts mixed with music and sound effects that tell the story of a fight. In real life, violence is random, messy, and when you get hit, it hurts. It was failing to distinguish between fantasy and reality that was the source of much of the bullying I knew as a child. Now, I spoke in the previous video about the types of bullying that exist, and I have engaged in them all, as bully and as victim. Bullying can leave lasting physical and psychological damage on people. I don't think you can get rid of it completely, but I think more could be done to alleviate its worst effects, particularly on autistic people. There are many instances of bullying in my childhood, but to relate them all would take too long and it would be too depressing. So I'll give you just a couple of relevant examples. Now, the first one involved a group of boys I knew in primary school I hung around with for a while, and for a time we just hung out the way that boys do, just in each other's houses and sometimes on the street and in parks. Then I got a new computer game and I spent all my time on it to the exclusion of our friendship. They would come round to my house and I would be on the computer the whole time they were there. Eventually they turned on me by stalking, ganging up and humiliating me in the middle of the street over the course of several days. Many years later, the ringleader of this group came round to a party I was hosting at my house and apologised for this behaviour on behalf of himself and the others in this group. I accepted the apology. I was lucky in the sense that this got resolved and there were no long-term effects, at least from this situation, because it didn't always work out like that. Now, which brings me on to my second story. Now, there was a girl, oh God, there's always a girl. There was a girl at school with whom I had a long-standing relationship, and I use the word relationship there in its broadest possible sense. For the way we knew each other evolved over time. At school, she was the cleverest girl in our whole class, and out of malice or envy, I attacked her, physically, sometimes verbally. But she was very intelligent and resourceful and used all her resources to turn it all right back on me. She turned the whole class and anyone who came into it against me. Pointing me out and saying, look, don't hang about with him, he's a wrong un. Now, this back and forth carried on for many years, but eventually she could see I was having difficulty with making friends and socialising, and she tried to help me out. An unintended and frankly tragic consequence of this was that I ended up falling in love with her. Now, by this time we were both adolescents, and my feelings and hormones were driving me up the wall. The girl did not reciprocate my feelings when I expressed them to her, And unable to accept this, I wound up stalking her and eventually sexually assaulting her in the middle of the street. This happened when I was 12 years old. I still think about it today. I was pulled in front of my secondary school guidance teacher, where the girl and her best friend had compiled a list of grievances against me, a list of all the things I'd done to her over time. It got even stranger when in my drama class, I wrote and staged a play where an onstage version of me shot dead an onstage version of her. Not my finest hour, not my finest work. She saw this play and she left school shortly afterwards. It was stuff like this that gave me a reputation in school, and I would have their eyes taken out of me regularly in the corridors by kids I never even knew, but who knew me by reputation. They would take their eyes out of the way I walked, with my feet splayed in both directions, my talking to myself stim, and my delusions of being well hard. Most of the time I had to ignore it, but this type of thing can linger long in the mind, especially if you come to believe you deserve it. Now, this type of thing followed me out of school into the real world, where I started working at a beachfront burger bar as a part-time job that helped me get through university. And it seemed for a while like everyone I had crossed in some way in my past came in to that burger bar, including the girl I have spoken of. Dressed in a business suit, on one occasion, she looked away indifferently as, at the behest of my work colleagues, I wiped down a table for her. Now, this is where bullying can cause its greatest damage, when it is unresolved, in situations where you can neither retaliate nor reconcile peacefully with the people who have hurt you. Now, I've been living in London for a long time, 17 years this September. I have tried to learn and move on from my experiences, but the emotional trauma that bullying can create, and has created in me, resurfaces when I see echoes of the past in my present experiences. On the occasions when I don't get on with other people, I'm reminded of the bullying I experienced at school. But it is not just my own actions that remind me of the past. Other people that I know through their own actions can trigger these memories as well. I was with an autistic theatre company for a couple of years, and between us, the four of us, we performed the stories of other autistic people. Now, the company was doing very well for a while, but then it imploded. A company member was behaving in a belligerent and insensitive way towards other company members. And they eventually compiled a list of grievances against him consisting of recorded instances of his behaviour. The complaints were legitimate, and he should have acknowledged this. Instead, he reacted to his list of grievances as an adult the way I had reacted to my list of grievances as a child, with arrogance and denial. I had endless conversations with this guy where he insisted that people complaining about him were unstable and delusional. Because of this, the company folded. For autistic people, patterns of behaviour, whether positive or negative, can be very difficult to change and adjust, and this can lead to problems with understanding, communicating and empathising with other people. These problems are the source of much of the bullying that autistic people can and do experience.